The boy didn't cry when she was taken away. Neither did his brother. They stood side by side at the top of the marble staircase, small hands clenched, eyes dark and quiet as the iron gates of the estate swallowed the woman who had raised them. The guards moved fast, efficient, avoiding eye contact. No one spoke. No one dared. The black woman with the gentle voice and steady hands didn't resist. She only looked back once, her eyes finding the twins like she always did when she wanted them to breathe, to stay calm. "Remember," she said softly. "Think first. Always." Then the gates closed. Inside the mansion, their father returned to his chair like nothing had happened. If you've ever felt your chest tighten at injustice, if you've ever watched power crush kindness without consequence, stay with this story. And if you enjoy deep, emotional stories like this, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment, because what happens next changes everything. Chairman Kang Dae-hyun ruled his world with silence. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't need to. His name alone made men sit straighter, made deals close themselves, made enemies disappear. In Seoul's underworld, he was known as a businessman. In darker rooms, he was known as something else entirely. At home, in the fortress-like estate carved into the hills, he ruled the same way. Rules were law. Questions were weakness. The twins, Min Jae and Min Jun, were 5 years old and already understood that fear had a rhythm. You learned it by listening. You learned when to speak by watching the tightening of jaws, the slowing of footsteps, the way staff members bowed just a second longer when their father passed. And then there was Nia Brooks. She had arrived 2 years earlier, quiet, composed, her Korean accented but respectful. Officially, she was hired as a live-in maid. Unofficially, she was the one who taught the boys how to name what they felt. She cleaned rooms during the day, yes, but at night she read to them. She listened. She asked questions no one else did. "Why do you think you felt angry?" she would ask, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Min Jun once frowned. "Because he told me to be quiet." "And what did you want to do?" "I wanted to shout." "And what did you do instead?" "I breathed." Nia smiled. "That's power too." Chairman Kang tolerated her because the boys slept better. Because the doctors reported fewer outbursts. Because peace, even emotional peace, was efficient. What he did not tolerate was risk. The breach happened at 2:14 a.m. A silent alert pulsed through the security room. One restricted corridor, Storage Wing C, Sublevel 2, had been accessed. No alarms triggered. No doors forced. Clean entry. Security Chief Park Jin-soo stiffened as the system pulled credentials. Nia Brooks, the screen read. Park hesitated for less than a second before making the call. Chairman Kang listened without expression, fingers steepled. "Bring her." By morning, Nia was standing alone in the vast living room, her small suitcase at her feet. The twins were there because they always were. Because Chairman Kang believed children should see consequences. "You used your access card at 2:14, he said calmly. "I was asleep," Nia replied, steady. "I never left my quarters." The system does not lie. Systems can be copied. Silence fell heavy. Chairman Kang stood. "You are dismissed. No investigation. No review. No chance to speak." Min Jae took one step forward. "Father." Chairman Kang raised a hand. The word died in his son's throat. That was the moment something fractured. After Nia left, the house returned to its normal breathing. Orders given. Orders obeyed. But the twins changed. They watched. They noticed how head housekeeper Madame Seo avoided the east hallway now. How she flinched when the security team passed. How she suddenly stopped entering codes herself and ordered others to do it. At night, the twins whispered. She said systems can be copied, Min-jun murmured. Min-jae nodded. Father says systems don't lie. People do. The boys didn't hack. They didn't break anything. They used what belonged to them. Family access. Their fingerprints opened doors even guards couldn't. Their retinal scans allowed them into mirrored systems meant only for audits. Chairman Kong had insisted on it himself. No one must ever lock my sons out, he had said. And so no one had. Min-jae sat on the chair, legs dangling. Min-jun stood beside him, eyes scanning lines of logs he barely understood but somehow felt. There, Min-jun whispered. Look. A duplication timestamp. A copied credential. Not Nia's original. A shadow version created days before the breach. The name attached wasn't hers. It was Madame Seo's terminal. Min-jae swallowed. If we tell father, he won't listen. They both knew it. So they waited. They watched patterns. They learned schedules. They learned how long the security system took to refresh during maintenance cycles. They learned which doors closed first, which cameras looped before alerting. 5-year-old boys don't plan rebellions. But they do remember lessons. Think first. Always. The lockdown happened during lunch. Elevators stopped between floors. Gates sealed. Cameras froze on repeating footage. Panic rippled quietly, like a held breath too long. Chairman Kong rose slowly from his seat. Who did this? No one answered. Until Min-jae spoke. We did. The room froze. Chairman Kong turned, eyes sharp. Release it. Min-jun shook his head. Not yet. Silence stretched. Dangerous silence. We found the truth, Min-jae said, voice small but steady. You didn't look. Chairman Kong stared at his sons like strangers. Bring me the evidence, he said finally. They did. Screens filled with logs, timestamps, footage. Madame Seo's face drained of color, as her own terminal ID blinked on the screen. I was protecting the house, she stammered. Chairman Kong said nothing. For the first time, fear wasn't obeying him. At sunset, a familiar figure stood again at the gates. Nia Brooks stepped inside. Not as a maid. As someone who had been right. And upstairs, 2 boys waited, hands clenched, hearts pounding, not in fear but in hope. Nia didn't step forward right away. She stood just inside the gate, hands folded, posture calm but alert. The estate looked the same, cold stone, iron symmetry, guards positioned like statues, but it felt different. Not safer. Just quieter. Like a place holding its breath. Chairman Kong watched her from the terrace above. He had not ordered her return with an apology. He had ordered it with a summons. That was his way. Park Jin-soo walked beside her. You're here as a consultant, he said quietly, not meeting her eyes. Not staff. Temporary. Nia nodded. I understand. But her gaze lifted to the windows. The twins were there. Min-jun pressed his forehead to the glass. Min-jae raised his hand in a small wave. She lifted her fingers in response, subtle, careful not to draw attention. Chairman Kong descended the stairs. You were right, he said, stopping a few steps away. No warmth. No softness. But no denial either. The system was compromised internally. Nia met his eyes. I said it could be. You did more than that, he replied. You taught my sons to act against me. She didn't flinch. I taught them to think. Silence. Follow me. They moved to the study. Heavy doors closed. Soundproof. Secure. Chairman Kong gestured to a chair. She sat. He remained standing. You will observe my sons again, he said. Advise on their development. Nothing more. And if I see injustice. He paused. You will report it. To you? Yes. Nia studied him for a moment. And will you listen? His jaw tightened. You are not here to challenge authority. I didn't challenge it before, she said calmly. I told the truth. There's a difference. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or something more dangerous, doubt. You are here because my sons trust you, he said. Do not mistake that for power. Nia stood. I never have. Upstairs, Min-jae paced in tight circles. She's back, Min-jun whispered, like saying it too loudly might undo it. But father is angry, Min-jae said. Min-jun shrugged. He's always angry. No, Min-jae replied. This is different. They were right. Chairman Kong didn't punish them. He didn't praise them either. He increased security protocols. Limited their access. Reduced their free movement. But he watched them more closely now. And they watched back. Nia resumed her sessions with the twins in a sunlit room overlooking the garden. No cameras inside, Chairman Kong had ordered that years ago, convinced children needed privacy to grow strong. Now, it was the only place free of his gaze. You were very brave, Nia said gently. Min-jun frowned. We were scared. That's what brave feels like. Min-jae tilted his head. Are you angry? With you? She smiled softly. No. With father. She took a breath. I think he's afraid. Of us? Min-jun asked. Of being wrong. The twins exchanged a look. They understood that kind of fear. Days passed. Madame Sia was gone. Officially reassigned. Unofficially erased. But systems don't heal just because one problem is removed. Staff whispered. Security tightened. Loyalty became brittle. Chairman Kong felt it. He had built his empire on control. On certainty. Now cracks appeared, not from enemies but from within. One night, he stood alone in the control room, staring at feeds looping silently. You let them override everything, he said to Park Jin-soo. They used family authorization, Park replied. It was allowed. Chairman Kang's reflection stared back at him in the glass. Allowed, he repeated. He remembered saying those words years ago. No one must ever lock my sons out. He hadn't considered what they might let themselves into. The twins were invited to dinner that night. A rare occurrence. They sat across from their father at the long table. Nia was not present. Why did you do it? Chairman Kong asked, cutting his food with precise movements. Min Jun answered first. Because it wasn't fair. That is not an answer. Min Jae said quietly, you didn't listen. Chairman Kong looked up. I listened to facts. We brought facts, Min Jun said. And you locked down my house. We used what you gave us, Min Jae replied. You said power is responsibility. Silence stretched. Chairman Kong set his knife down. You endangered everyone. We stopped danger, Min Jun said. For a moment it seemed like anger would explode. Instead, Chairman Kong leaned back. Who taught you to speak like this? Both boys answered at once. Nia. Later that night, Chairman Kong called her back to the study. They are changing, he said. She met his gaze. So are you. He exhaled slowly. I built this house to be unbreakable. And yet, she replied gently, it broke when you refused to look. He turned away. What would you have done? She didn't hesitate. Investigated. Asked questions. Protected the innocent. And if the innocent was guilty, then the truth would still protect you. He considered that. Days later, a new breach alert sounded. Not a test. Not internal. External. A rival syndicate had exploited the chaos, probing for weakness. Chairman Kong moved fast. Orders flew. Security mobilized. But the twins noticed something he didn't. Patterns. They're copying old routines, Min Jun whispered to Min Jae. Before the changes. They think father won't adapt. Min Jae nodded. But he hasn't fully. They told Nia. Nia told Park. Park hesitated. Then went to Chairman Kong. The ambush was stopped before it began. Afterward, Chairman Kong summoned the twins again. You saved lives, he said. Min Jun blinked. We just noticed. Chairman Kong studied them. Notice more. Something shifted. Not trust, but acknowledgement. That night, Chairman Kong stood outside the twins' room, listening to their laughter with Nia through the door. He didn't enter. He walked away. If you're still here, thank you for staying with this story. If it's pulling you in, tap like, it helps more than you know, and tell me in the comments what you think Chairman Kong will do next. Because the hardest part isn't discovering the truth. It's living with it. And the house of absolute control was about to be tested again, from a place no one expected. Chairman Kong did not sleep that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of generators and the muted footsteps of guards changing shifts. The house had always sounded like obedience to him. Predictable. Reliable. Tonight, it sounded uncertain. He replayed the twins' words again and again. You didn't listen. That accusation carried more weight than any threat ever had. In the days that followed, the estate moved differently. Orders were still given, but now they were questioned, quietly, indirectly, but enough for Chairman Kong to feel it. Park Jin-soo hesitated before confirming commands. Junior staff double-checked permissions. Fear was still there, but it was no longer absolute. And fear, when diluted, becomes dangerous. Nia noticed it too. During her sessions with the twins, she saw how often guards passed the windows, how often security feeds refreshed on their own. Someone was nervous. Someone was watching too closely. Do you feel safe? She asked gently one afternoon. Min Jun shrugged. Safer than before. Min Jae frowned. But people are angry. Who? Everyone who liked how things were. That answer unsettled her. Later that day, she crossed paths with Park Jin-soo in the hallway. You need to be careful, he said quietly, stopping just long enough to speak without being overheard. About what? You changed the balance. I didn't, she replied. The truth did. Park shook his head. Truth doesn't protect people in this house. Power does. She met his gaze. Then maybe the house needs less power. That night, Chairman Kong summoned his inner circle. No twins. No Nia. Only men who had followed him for years. We were breached, he said calmly. Twice. Once internally. Once externally. Silence. That does not happen by coincidence. One man spoke carefully. There are whispers. Chairman Kang's eyes flicked toward him. About what? About weakness. The word hung in the air like poison. Because you reinstated the maid, another added. She is not a maid, Chairman Kong snapped. That reaction surprised even him. The men exchanged looks. She influences your sons, someone said. And through them, you. Chairman Kong stood slowly. Be very careful. The room fell silent again. After the meeting, Chairman Kong returned to the control room alone. He watched footage of the twins from earlier that day. How they spoke to staff. How staff responded, not with fear, but with something close to respect. That was unacceptable. Or was it? He remembered his own childhood. Fear had ruled his father's house too. But fear had also bred rebellion. Lies. Betrayal. He had sworn never to repeat that mistake. And yet, the next escalation came without warning. One of the outer guards failed to report in. Then another. Alarms triggered, delayed, subtle, wrong. Park Jin-soo rushed into the control room. We have a problem. Chairman Kong was already moving. Lockdown. Systems responded, but slower than they should have. They're inside the perimeter, Park said. Someone helped them. The twins were in their room when the emergency lights flickered. Min Jun's eyes widened. This isn't a drill. Min Jae nodded. Too quiet. They ran. Down back corridors. Through service passages only children and staff knew. They reached the observation room where Nia was reviewing reports. They're here, Min Jun said breathlessly. Nia stood instantly. Who? Not staff, Min Jae replied. They look wrong. She grabbed her tablet. Come with me. They didn't go toward safety. They went toward the truth. In the control room, Chairman Kong watched feeds flicker out one by one. They're targeting cameras, Park said. Selective. That means intelligence, Chairman Kong replied. Not brute force. Then a feed snapped back on. Two men. Armed. Moving with purpose. They know the layout, Park said. Chairman Kang's jaw tightened. Someone betrayed us again. At that exact moment, the control room door opened. Min Jae and Min Jun walked in. Park spun. You can't be here. Chairman Kong raised a hand. Let them speak. They're following old paths, Min Jun said quickly. From before you changed protocols. Min Jae pointed to the screen. They think cameras loop for 12 seconds. It's only 6 now. Chairman Kong stared. How do you know this? You updated it, Min Jun said. But not everywhere. Nia stepped in behind them. The service tunnels still run on legacy code. Park swore under his breath. They'll reach the East Wing. That's where your private office is, Min Jae said. Chairman Kong felt something cold settle in his chest. Can you stop them? He asked. The twins hesitated. Yes, Min Jun said. But you won't like how. Chairman Kong looked at the screens, at the flickering threat inching closer. Do it, he said. They moved fast. Fingers flying over panels meant for adults. Commands issued with family authorization. Doors sealed. Lights cut. A controlled blackout. The intruders panicked. One tripped. Another fired blindly. Security swarmed in minutes. When it was over, bodies were restrained on the floor, breathing hard, alive. Alive. Chairman Kong exhaled slowly. You spared them, he said later, when the twins sat across from him again. They weren't the problem, Min Jae replied. The problem was who let them in, Min Jun added. Chairman Kong looked at Nia. She met his gaze steadily. Violence is easy. Accountability is harder. He nodded once. The next morning, 3 senior staff members were gone. No announcement. No explanation. But everyone understood. That afternoon, Chairman Kong called a meeting no one expected. All staff. All levels. He stood before them, hands clasped behind his back. There will be changes, he said. Murmurs rippled. Dismissals will require review, he continued. Security decisions will be audited. Some faces tightened. Others relaxed. Anyone who fears truth, he finished, does not belong in this house. The twins stood beside Nia, watching. Min Jun whispered, he's scared. Min Jae shook his head. No. He's choosing. That night, Nia packed her bag. The twins watched anxiously. You're leaving? Min Jun asked. For tonight, she said softly. Sometimes change needs space. Chairman Kong met her at the door. You were almost killed today, he said. So were your sons, she replied. Silence. You can stay, he said finally. Permanently. She studied him. As what? He hesitated. Then spoke carefully. As someone who tells the truth. She smiled, not triumphantly but kindly. Then yes. If you're still watching, you're part of this journey now. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and tell me, do you think Chairman Kong can really change, or is this just the calm before something darker? Because the most dangerous test was still coming. The calm didn't last. It never does in places built on power. For a few weeks, Blackstone Estate, no one called it that aloud, but everyone knew, operated under a fragile balance. New protocols were in place. Dual authorization. Logged reviews. Oversight meetings that felt strange and uncomfortable to men who had thrived in shadows. Chairman Kong watched it all from a distance. He spoke less. Observed more. And that silence made some people nervous. Too nervous. Nia felt it first. She noticed the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. How certain staff members smiled too quickly, bowed too deeply. How Park Jin-soo began insisting on escorting her even for short walks in the garden. "You think someone is watching me," she said one evening as they walked. Park didn't deny it. "I know they are." "Who?" "People who think you are the reason things are changing." Nia sighed. "Change was coming whether I was here or not." Park stopped walking. "You don't understand. You aren't just a witness. You're a symbol." That word stayed with her. Symbol. The twins, meanwhile, were thriving in ways no one expected. Min-jae had begun asking questions during security briefings, questions that forced grown men to pause and rethink assumptions. Min-jun spent hours studying behavior patterns, not on screens, but in people, who avoided eye contact, who lingered too long, who spoke when silence would have been safer. They learned fast. Too fast. Chairman Kong noticed. "You are turning them into analysts," he told Nia one afternoon. "I'm turning them into thinkers," she replied. "They are children. They are human." He didn't argue. But late at night, he watched old footage of himself at their age, quiet, obedient, terrified, and wondered which path was safer. The next escalation came disguised as routine. An internal audit flagged missing funds. Small amounts at first. Easy to overlook. But they formed a pattern. Park brought it to Chairman Kong. "Someone is skimming," he said. Carefully. Chairman Kang's eyes hardened. "Who?" "That's the problem. Whoever it is knows our new systems." The twins overheard part of the conversation from the hallway. "They adapted," Min-jun whispered. Min-jae nodded. "Which means they were already inside." That night, Min-jae couldn't sleep. He slipped out of bed and padded down the hall to Nia's room. She was awake, reading. "Something is wrong," he said. She closed the book. "Tell me." "People are testing father," Min-jae said. "They think he's soft." Nia's jaw tightened. "And what do you think?" "I think," he said slowly, "that soft people don't survive here. But fair people might." She studied his face. "You shouldn't have to think about this." "But I do," he replied. The next morning, Chairman Kong was nearly killed. The attack was precise. A vehicle bomb meant for his convoy detonated seconds after he changed cars, on a whim, for no reason he could explain. 3 guards died. Blackstone Estate went into full lockdown. Sirens. Armed patrols. Doors sealed. Chairman Kong stood in the war room, blood on his sleeve that wasn't his. "This was an inside job," Park said grimly. Chairman Kong nodded. "They knew the route." "And the change," Park added. "Someone predicted it." Silence followed. Chairman Kong thought of the meeting weeks ago. Of the men who warned him about weakness. Of the staff who had smiled too eagerly. "Bring everyone in," he said. Everyone. The twins weren't supposed to be there. But they were. Min-jun stood beside the screen, eyes sharp. The trigger wasn't manual. Park looked startled. "How do you know?" "The delay," Min-jun said. "It waited for confirmation." Min-jae added, "Someone expected you to be in the other car." Chairman Kong closed his eyes briefly. "They wanted certainty," Min-jae continued. "Because uncertainty scares people who rely on control." Nia watched the room carefully. Faces. Micro-expressions. Tension. "There," she said quietly. Everyone turned. One of the senior logistics officers had gone pale. Chairman Kong followed her gaze. "Bring him," he ordered. The man broke. He confessed quickly. Too quickly. Others were involved. Disgruntled. Afraid. Angry at the changes. At the audits. At the loss of unchecked power. "They said you were becoming weak," the man sobbed. "They said you'd destroy us all." Chairman Kong listened without expression. When it was over, he dismissed everyone. Except the twins. And Nia. "You were right," he said to her. Again. She didn't respond. "You changed how they see me," he continued. "That almost got me killed." Minjun stiffened. "We didn't mean." Chairman Kong raised a hand. "I'm not blaming you," he said. "I'm acknowledging reality." He turned to Nia. "What would you do now?" She hesitated. This wasn't theory anymore. "I would choose," she said carefully. "Either rule by fear again, or accept that change has a cost, and protect it." Chairman Kong walked to the window. Looked out over the estate. "I built this empire because fear was the only language anyone respected," he said quietly. "But fear makes cowards. Cowards betray." He turned back to them. "I won't go back." The twins exchanged a look. That night, Chairman Kong addressed his organization, not just the house. Messages went out across networks, businesses, shadows. A declaration. Internal betrayal would no longer be met with silence or fear, but exposure. Investigations would replace executions. Accountability would replace rumor. Some cheered. Some panicked. Some plotted. The twins sat with Nia afterward, exhausted. "Are we safe now?" Minjun asked. Nia smiled sadly. "Safer than before. But safety isn't a destination. It's a practice." Minjae leaned against her. "Father is lonely." She nodded. "Leaders often are." Down the hall, Chairman Kong sat alone in his study, staring at the family photo on his desk. For the first time in his life, he wondered if ruling differently might cost him everything. Or save what mattered most. If you're still watching, don't go anywhere. The final test is coming, and it won't be fought with weapons. The fallout was slow, and that made it worse. People didn't revolt openly. They adapted. Smiles returned, but they were tighter. Conversations resumed, but they happened behind closed doors. Loyalty became performative. Respect became conditional. Chairman Kong felt it in the way his calls were answered half a second later than before. In the way old allies asked too many questions. In the way silence followed his new rules. Nia felt it too. One afternoon, as she walked the inner garden with the twins, Minjun suddenly stopped. "Someone is following us," he whispered. Nia didn't turn around. "Why do you think that?" "The footsteps," Minjae said. "They don't match ours." Nia slowed her pace deliberately. The footsteps slowed too. She smiled faintly. "Good ears." Later that evening, Park Jin-soo confirmed it. "They're watching you," he said quietly. "Not to hurt you. To see how much influence you still have. And if they decide I have too much." Nia asked. Park didn't answer. The twins noticed changes in their father too. Chairman Kong no longer barked orders. He asked questions. He listened. Sometimes he even changed his mind. That unsettled people more than his cruelty ever had. Min-jae watched him one night from the hallway as he argued with an advisor. "You're weakening our deterrence," the man said sharply. "No," Chairman Kong replied. "I'm removing excuses. You think this makes us stronger? I know it makes us cleaner." The advisor scoffed. "Clean doesn't survive in our world." Chairman Kong leaned forward. "We'll see." That advisor resigned the next day. 2 days later, one of Chairman Kang's offshore accounts was frozen. Not seized. Frozen. A warning. The message was clear: change too much, and the system you helped build will turn on you. Park stormed into the study. "We have a serious problem." Chairman Kong looked up calmly. "Talk." "Someone tipped off international regulators. Selectively. Just enough to apply pressure, not enough to expose anyone else." Chairman Kong exhaled slowly. "They're trying to corner me." "They're trying to make you revert," Park said. The twins were listening from the corner of the room. "They want you scared," Min-jun said. Chairman Kong looked at his son. "And should I be?" Min-jun shook his head. "Fear makes mistakes." Min-jae added, "But confidence without truth does too." Nia watched the exchange carefully. This wasn't normal. 5-year-old boys didn't advise crime lords. But these boys weren't normal. That night, Nia made a decision. She requested a private meeting with Chairman Kong. When she entered his study, he was already there, standing by the window. "I know what you're going to say," he said without turning. "Then I won't waste time," she replied. He turned to face her. "You're in danger." "So are your sons," she said calmly. "And so are you. I can protect you." "You can't," she said gently. "Not from this." Silence stretched. "They won't stop," she continued. "Because what you're doing threatens more than power. It threatens justification." Chairman Kong studied her. "And what do you suggest?" She took a breath. "Transparency." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "That's suicide." "No," she said. "It's leverage." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't expose everything," she explained. "You expose patterns. You make betrayal expensive. You force people to choose sides publicly." Chairman Kong was quiet for a long time. "And if they choose against me? Then you'll finally know who was never with you." The next morning, Chairman Kong did something no one expected. He opened parts of his internal operations to independent auditors, carefully chosen, fiercely protected, and impossible to intimidate without consequences. The news rippled through the underworld like an earthquake. Panic followed. Then anger. Then desperation. The twins watched the reactions unfold on secure feeds. "They're scared," Min-jun said. "Because now lies leave traces," Min-jae replied. That same evening, Nia received an anonymous message on her phone. "Leave. Or they won't miss." She showed it to Chairman Kong. He stared at the screen, jaw tightening. "I warned you," he said. Nia met his eyes. "I'm not leaving." "You don't owe me this," he said. "I don't owe you," she agreed. "I owe them." She glanced toward the twins' room. That night, the attack came quietly. No explosions. No alarms. A fire. It started in the East Wing storage area. Controlled. Precise. Designed to draw security away. Chairman Kong moved instantly. Orders flew. Guards redeployed. Too fast. Too clean. Min Jae woke to the smell of smoke. "This is wrong," he said, shaking his brother. They ran to Nia's room. Empty. Min Jun's chest tightened. She wouldn't leave. They ran. Down staircases. Through service corridors. They found her near the archives, coughing, trapped by smoke and fallen debris. "Nia!" Min Jun shouted. She turned, eyes wide with relief. "You shouldn't be here." "We know," Min Jae said. "But we are." They worked together, pushing, pulling, dragging until they reached a clear corridor. Security found them minutes later. When Chairman Kong arrived, his composure shattered. He pulled the twins into his arms without thinking. Then he looked at Nia. And bowed his head. "I failed," he said quietly. "You didn't," she replied, hoarse. "You're still standing." The fire was contained. The attackers escaped. But the message was loud. That night, Chairman Kong made his final choice. He gathered his sons and Nia in the study. "This ends," he said. "How?" Min Jun asked. "With the truth," Chairman Kong replied. "All of it." Nia's breath caught. "That will destroy parts of me," he said. "Yes." He looked at his sons. "But it will protect you." The next weeks were chaos. Selective disclosures. Strategic cooperation with authorities. Deals rewritten. Enemies exposed. Chairman Kong lost allies. He lost money. He lost power. But he gained something else. Peace inside his own walls. The twins noticed the difference first. Staff smiled genuinely now. Not out of fear. Out of relief. Security stood straighter, not because they were afraid, but because they believed. One evening, Min Jun sat beside his father. "Are you sad?" he asked. Chairman Kong considered the question. "Yes," he said honestly. "And no." "Why both?" "Because I lost the man I was," he replied. "And I don't miss him." Min Jae leaned in. "Are you proud of us?" Chairman Kong didn't hesitate. "Every day." Nia watched from the doorway, heart full and heavy. She had come to this house as a maid. She stayed as a mirror. If this story has moved you so far, don't forget to like the video, it really helps, and tell me in the comments what you think true power looks like. Because the end is close now. And it's quieter than you might expect. The house no longer smelled like fear. That was the first thing Min Jae noticed on the morning everything finally slowed down. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows without guards shifting nervously beneath it. Footsteps echoed normally, not hurried, not cautious. Even the air felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had released a breath they'd been holding for years. Change had settled in, not loudly, not triumphantly, but firmly. Chairman Kong stood in the kitchen doorway, watching his sons eat breakfast. He had never done this before. Meals were usually silent, formal, distant. Today, Min Jun spilled juice, laughed, and no one flinched. Nia sat nearby, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, observing quietly. "This is strange," Min Jun said, looking up. "What is?" Chairman Kong asked. "You're here," Min Jun replied. Chairman Kong paused, then nodded. "I should have been before." Min Jae studied his father carefully. Are you going to leave again? No, Chairman Kong said. Not like before. The boys exchanged a look. They didn't celebrate. They didn't cheer. They believed him. The outside world, however, did not move on so easily. News traveled in fragments. Whispers turned into headlines. Deals dissolved. New alliances formed cautiously. Chairman Kang's name no longer carried the same kind of fear, but it carried weight. A different kind. Some called him reckless. Others called him weak. A few, quietly, called him dangerous again, because unpredictability frightened them more than cruelty ever had. Park Jin-soo stood beside Chairman Kong one evening, watching the city lights flicker below the estate. They're waiting, Park said. For you to slip. To regret this. Chairman Kong nodded. Let them wait. You don't miss it. Park asked. The certainty. Chairman Kong thought of his son's laughter echoing down the halls. Of Nia's calm presence. Of sleeping through the night for the first time in decades. No, he said. I miss nothing. Nia prepared to leave. Not in disgrace. Not in fear. By choice. The twins sat on her bed as she packed. You're really going, Min Jun said, voice tight. Yes, she replied softly. Min Jae frowned. Did we do something wrong? She stopped packing and knelt in front of them. No. You did everything right. Then why? Min Jun asked. Because, she said gently, you don't need me the way you did before. Min Jae shook his head. We always need you. Nia smiled sadly. And I'll always be here. Just not under this roof. When Chairman Kong heard, he said nothing at first. Then he nodded. You gave us more than you were paid for, he said. More than I deserved. Nia met his eyes. You changed because you chose to. I only pointed. You'll always have a place here, he said. I know, she replied. The goodbye was quiet. No guards. No ceremony. Just the twins hugging her tightly, refusing to let go until she laughed through tears. Remember, she whispered to them, just as she had the day she was taken away. Think first. Always. They nodded. The gates opened. This time, she walked out freely. Weeks passed. The house settled into a new rhythm. Not perfect. Not innocent. But honest. The twins continued learning, not just systems and strategies but people. Chairman Kong began attending their sessions, sometimes speaking, sometimes just listening. One afternoon, Min Jun asked a question that stopped everyone. Father, he said, why did you fire Nia without asking questions? The room went quiet. Chairman Kong didn't deflect. I was afraid, he said simply. Of what? Min Jae asked. Of losing control, Chairman Kong replied. And I thought control was the same as strength. Min Jun nodded slowly. But it wasn't. No, Chairman Kong agreed. It wasn't. That night, Chairman Kong stood alone in the study again, but this time, the silence didn't feel heavy. He looked at the empty chair across from his desk. The place where Nia had once sat, unafraid, telling him truths no one else dared to speak. He understood now. Power that cannot listen will always be betrayed. Months later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. The twins tore it open together. Nia wrote about her new life. About working with children who had never known safety. About teaching them that their voices mattered. About how proud she was of two boys who had changed a man, a house, and a system simply by refusing to accept injustice. Chairman Kong read at last. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, beside contracts, beside weapons, beside the remnants of an old life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Min Jae asked, "Do you think bad men can become good?" Chairman Kong considered the question longer than anyone expected. "I think," he said slowly, "men can choose better. Every day. Or they can choose worse." Min Jun smiled. "Then we'll remind you." Chairman Kong chuckled, a real sound, rare and warm. "I hope you do." The house lights turned on one by one. Not because they were ordered. Because it was time. And somewhere far beyond the gates, a woman walked freely, knowing that the seeds she planted had grown roots deep enough to last. If you stayed till the end, thank you. Stories like this remind us that even in the darkest places, justice can begin with one brave voice, and two small ones who refuse to stay silent. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more powerful stories, and tell me in the comments what part moved you the most. Because sometimes, the most exceptional things happen when power finally listens.